Welcome back, everyone. It's finals time here in Utrecht, the special event 2023. We've just talked to Nico. He's booked his place in here, being able to overcome his good old friend and testing partner, Tord Reklev. And in the Gudra mirror, it seems that Vinny was able to come out on top. Yeah,
it'll be a great opportunity to showcase Vinny's abilities of playing that lost Gudra list, already overcoming, you know, multiple IC winners, Stefan Ivanov. We've had the chance to speak to him, and we both had the chance to speak to Nico, in fact, which has been really fun. But in for a really interesting final feature match here between Arceus Duraludon versus this Lost Gudra.
Yeah, this could go long. These are two quite tanky, difficult to knock out archetypes that have lots of healing inbuilt. I think there's been a bit of a tug of war to see which one's actually stronger. Some people land on the Arceus Duraludon side of things. Some people are enjoying the recent uptick in the Lost Zone engine of Hisuian Gudra V-Star. So we might decide today based on this result.
Yeah, I feel like for both of these decks, particularly for this tournament, both had quite a bit of a spike in actual play as well. We saw multiple in day two of both decks, and we had a little bit of insight from Nico, didn't we, when you had the chance to interview him, and the fact that it could come down to this war of attrition between the two decks because of maybe who could get that first hit onto their main attacker, and then coming down to that one potential V-Star power, that Moisture Star ability. However, Duraludon does still have access to 2 Hyper Potions, or a few Hyper Potions, depending on the list. But
both players have healing. You think about the G-Max Pulverization, it can hit the magic 220 before things evolve up. So in that regard, like Nico was saying, utilizing his Gust is going to be a big way for him to pounce on his opponents, whereas Vinny just has that baked-in V-Star power, which is whenever he wants it, he can fully heal one of his Hisuian Gudra. And there really isn't many ways to play around the Rolling Iron. There's 4 copies of Boss's Orders, but then you're probably just taking out 1 prize Pokemon and slowing down in that prize race, because Vinny's going to try and create that difficult board state.
Yeah, and with Vinny's perspective with that Lost Gudra, with those kind of additional single prize attackers he could utilize just to apply some pressure, at least in the early stages, whilst he's kind of building on the Gudras on his bench. That could be one way that he could sort of navigate this matchup to really just kind of force Nico in a position where he's got to utilize every one of those resources to maximum value.
Yeah, because his healing, you can only really time it in certain spots. You can't use it all that early. Your early energy attachments are required for you to be able to attack with your Arceus. So if you get an early cram hit in, you can't really Hyper Potion it and undo that pressure. So trying to weave in those single prizes early on is the best place for them, because later on in the game, that's when Nico has access to his healing cards.
Yeah, exactly. Just that extra attachment of the DTE to activate the Hyper Potion healing without sort of sacrificing any of those sort of really core basic energies they need to be able to attack is going to be vital. Just that timing, as you mentioned. So that's why we're up for a really interesting game against 2 players. We're just going to go to the top 8 overview, just to kind of give you an understanding exactly who was in our top 8. Just a reminder of the decks itself.
Yeah, I can't believe that we're seeing so few Lugia. Actually, in 9th place, it was another Lugia archetype. They could have bubbled in on those 32 match points, but was unfortunate enough to be our 9th seed. So it's only 1 Lugia out here with Tord Reklev, and he's finally been overcome by the Arceus Duraludon variant. There was actually another Arceus deck also in top 8, the Inteleon Beedrill. We haven't seen that one for a while.
Yeah, it's a fantastic throwback to almost a different format. Where Bernardo was able to bring that to first seed with a 10-1-3 record. That Arceus Inteleon, utilizing some of those tech pieces like the Cheren's Care to keep the Arceus keep going, and then using things like Single Strike Mustard to get that Beedrill, just to have a very efficient attacker with just 1 grass energy to use that Persist Sting and really sort of wipe out some of these very prevalent decks right now in the format.
Yeah, Bernardo was on his winning in, and actually there were a number of Reggies on the winning in, but they all fell, unfortunately, to some of these tankier decks in the room. A lot of Gudra making their way in, so it really seems like this is why we're seeing so much of these tanking archetypes. They're really capitalizing on the amount of Reggies in the format, as well as the Lost Zone players.
Yeah, just to give you a bit of an idea how that kind of breaks down, of course, it's just the 8 decks that were here. There were 3 Lost Box Gudra V-Star, which is a fantastic sort of conversion, in all honesty. exactly. And it meant that one was guaranteed in the final since they both met in top 4. The two Mew VMAX, unfortunately, seem to have fallen off towards the early stages of the top 8. And now we're starting to just see, of course, in the last round, as our feature match, we saw Nico with that Arceus Duraludon VMAX. As already mentioned, it's been a popular deck, I feel, for this tournament. Both myself and Shay said we would have played it.
Yeah, and I can't argue with either of you. I think it would have been a really solid choice. Amazing to see so much of the Goodra. Let's see how our players actually navigated their way through the top 8. As we see on the top side of things, Vinny was able to overcome the Arceus Inteleon archetype. I imagine that was also a slog with Sharon's Care on Bernardo's side and Palpad. Vinny once again trying to capitalize on his Moisture Star when available. That was a 2-1 victory. And then we see the Goodra mirror match. And as we've mentioned earlier, overcoming Stefan Ivanov is no easy feat.
Yeah, and with Nico having to also overcome already one Lost Box Goodra with Lorenz. We saw him earlier on stream where he was able to take down that Reggie's deck in his matchup. Going up then against our top 4 feature match against, of course, the ever-impressive Tord Reklev with his very consistent Lugia list, but not quite teched out for Arceus Duraludon. And here we are. We see Nico yet again in another final up against Vinny, who I believe also top 8 in Liverpool, if I'm not mistaken.
Goodra. So, yeah, really experienced with this archetype. No surprise to see them piloting it again to another fantastic placement. And sticking with some just tried and true counts, really. I think really in terms of tech cards, I'm seeing just the likes of Choice Belt, and even that's becoming more and more common in the deck list. So we've established Goodra at this point. We're getting to a list where everyone has found it to be refined and very effective.
Yeah, I mean, just on some of the online tournaments that we've seen in sort of recent weeks as well, Goodra just seems to have found a place. Maybe it's quite late in the meta itself, but again, it's just gone that full roundabout. You know, Tord's gone back to a just very consistent Lugia list to be able to put himself through undefeated, I think, into top 8, but then obviously fell short just because those tech cards just weren't quite there for him. And Lugia just continued to fall down at that stage. This has been absolutely fantastic to see that Lugia's not just completely dominated and can be taken down by these other decks.
I think a lot of people feel a little bit nervous and worried when they see that many Lugia in the previous few regionals, but players are always willing to adapt, take risks as well in certain instances. The Goodra not really known for having that strong of a Lugia matchup, but at least you have those Temple of Sinnoh, and at least you force things out of the opponent. You have your constant rolling iron that puts your opponent under pressure, puts them on a clock. You can take constant one-prize knockouts on little threats. You can try and gust up Archeops when need be, and that's very similar on the Arceus Duraludon side. Yes, your opponent has these frustrating Pokemon that can take these massive up trades, but again, it's Temple of Sinnoh being utilized in Nico's list, as well as the big Parasol, and that very high counter bosses orders and Pokegear allow him to capitalize on Archeops before they become too much of a problem.
Yeah, it's been key. We've seen like Stefan Ivanov also play Arceus Duraludon to great effect before, focusing on that pure consistency version with a sort of Tower of Darkness, being able to then sort of continue drawing cards. It's always been a little bit susceptible to that. We've seen Arceus Duraludon struggle a bit on stream before. I mean, Nico wasn't drawing the greatest when we had him the second time, but he was able to pull through because he just had the right attackers at the right time as well. But we do have both our players sat down now and set up for our game 1 of the final of Pokemon Utrecht special event, as we do take a quick look at the prizes here.
Yep, a couple Battle VIP pass. A little bit awkward for Vinny. You do love to go wide in those opening stages. Get as many Comphase rolling as early as possible is always important, as well as of course, your Radiant Greninja for some additional draws, and your Hisuian Goodra. But it's liftoff for game 1. Here we see the fist bump, and we'll see which player is going to begin the game. It's going to be Nico with his Arceus V in the active position.
Yeah, does that give Nico a massive advantage already, just being able to hopefully set up the board? Does have a spare Arceus V
is there
and
any energy in hand?
No, not much going on right now. Does have the Duraludon VMAX, I believe.
No energy.
It's just a pass.
Yeah, I mean, Nico must have been happy going first, but unable to get the vital turn 1 energy attachment. So now Vinny has the chance to really shake off the fact that he's gone second here by having a pretty good start of his own. He's doing some Pokemon counts. You can see them coming to the front of his deck now for his opening search with the Battle VIP pass, which I think you've started out with. And he's even got the comp phase, so a pretty solid start for him.
Yeah, it's a fantastic start for Vinny. Just being able to just double check what is prized. There are 2 Mirage Gates there as well to kind of, a bit awkward to sort of power up those Gudras when he needs to. However, already has seen one of the Battle VIP passes that was in his deck, despite 2 being prized. So maybe he could just draw into one of his Mirage Gates at some stage as well. And as you know, with the Lost engines that we do, or the Lost Zone engines, I should say, we do know they get to go through a lot of their deck quite quickly.
Yeah, and I really like seeing him peek at a few cards there. I saw he was eyeing up his choice belts. That can be a big way for Vinny to change his math and even take knockouts on evolving V Pokemon with that Rolling Iron, which is so vital. And now it looks like he's content with just getting some cards to get drawing through the deck, seeing another Comfey and Radiant Greninja. I think there's already a few energy in hand, so it definitely makes sense. He'll be able to cycle a handful of cards here. Yeah,
definitely something we see typical of a lot of Lost Zone engines, which do play the Radiant Greninja, because maybe the Lost Box decks sometimes play the Radiant Charizard as a potential attacker as well, but they use this as the additional draw power with that concealed cards. Radiant Greninja finding itself at home in a lot of decks just because of the pure power, not just from his ability, but his attack as well. That Moonlight Shuriken being fantastic as something that could be utilized in Vinny's list, just because he also plays that water energy for the Gudra, as he does use it.
I think Nico has 2 Arceus in play early on as well, right? So if you can set up both of those Arceus 1990s, it allows you to Rolling Iron into them from then on. So that might be a play that Vinny keeps open throughout the game. Such a nice synergy with the Gudra having water energy, because as we know, Lost Zone decks can really take advantage of that Moonlight Shuriken. As we are off with some flower selecting now, Metal Energy hitting the Lost Zone. Is there any supporter for Vinny? No, looks like it's just a Pokegear first.
He's just kind of having a look.
There's a chorus, and you got to think that's the take.
Yeah, pretty big pickup there from the Pokegear. You know, he wants to be sort of chaining those as soon as possible, getting into that 7 in the Lost Zone count to activate Mirage Gate, and even just getting to the 4, just potentially to get to the Cramorant. Lost Provisions, Spit Innocently combination attack to attack with no energy cost there. Just confirmation at top as well that V-Star is on top of a random Pokemon card. And it's not part of the Lost Zone, so it's just 1 currently in there, but is playing the Chorus Experiment now.
Well, there's at least 1 easy choice. Drapion certainly going into the Lost Zone. Looks like really good takes here. Capture Energy, Scoop Up Net, and Hisuian Gudra V. That's really going to help round out his turn here. You could then Capture Energy for Cramorant and have a Spit Innocently turn here, whilst also developing a Gudra.
Yeah, really strong, really sort of powerful options available to Vinny just because of the cards that he's having access to right now. Nico must be thinking a little bit envious about that energy just available to him right now. But, you know, with the Lost engine, again, they typically do get to this stage quite easily, particularly going second as well. Obviously, it's always a bit of a gamble, but they do get rolling, and I'm going to use that pun multiple times.
It just seems to happen, you know. But here we are, a nice shuffle up from Vinny, and it feels like he has plenty to work with in hand. He can pay retreat now out into the next Comfey, which will allow him to get to that 4th threshold for the Lost Provisions with Cramorant. I'm not sure what else he really needs. Ooh, he's got a tough decision now, I think.
Definitely a Mirage Gate.
It may have been another Colress, I think, that he's up against. It could be a Temple of Sinnoh, though. I wasn't quite certain. Oh, and Mirage Gate going with 2. It was a Temple of Sinnoh as well, so he's trying to slow Nico down and deny a Trinity Charge by the looks of things, valuing that more than the Mirage Gate. But that means he'll only have 1 until he starts taking some prize cards.
I wonder if that's something he's already counted out as well, because we did see, obviously, the Pokemon count. He did start looking through those little tech cards like that Choice Belt that was hopefully available to him as well, which he has been able to find, and does announce the Spit Innocently attack, so does deal the first damage of the final. And it's just down to Nico. Does grab a Pokegear, but already has a number of pieces available to him.
We've got Starbirth available. We have Marnie available as well. I feel like with so many flower selectings and concealed cards, that could be a good thing to fire off early, and it exactly is going to be that for Nico. Can Marnie and then possibly look to Starbirth to bounce Stadium, I would imagine, and then find double turbo energy. It feels like a decent shout here.
Yeah, depending on what this draw is, of course. Does have access to 5 cards now that he didn't have before. Does have the Stadium
bounce. Not too shabby.
So there's a number of pieces there that are available to Nico as well. So it's now just...
And this is the difference between missing and hitting your first turn energy attachment. You could be initiating that prize race whilst also accelerating energy from your deck. But here, Nico might have to settle for just pulling energy out of his deck. We will see the Starbirth now, though, that Arceus V-Star on the bench is going to allow Nico to grab any 2 cards he likes. I feel like Double Turbo has to be one of those. It's exactly put to the front of the list here. But I'm not really sure what else. You're leaving a vulnerable Arceus in the active position to simply get attacked once again via a Cramorant.
Yeah, it's one of those things which might just be an inevitable sort of sacrifice just by using Trinity Charge
for next turn.
Yeah, it will switch available as well. So a number of options here. He does just go for the quick ball. Maybe just looking for an alternative Pokemon to go into as well. Another Duraludon, maybe. Yeah,
he may not be happy with allowing this Arceus to go down for free. So he may even just play the switch into something else to sponge for a turn and then attach to the V-Star on the bench, knowing that you can bounce on another turn. It's actually going to be a fresh Arceus. This is another way around of doing so, forcing more from Vinny rather than just having that free Cramorant attack.
Yeah, Vinny does play the 3 copies of Boss's Orders. We know one is currently prized. Goodra in the same sort of vein where it just wants to be attacking the right Pokemon because it's a pretty set 200 damage, right? So it's going to want to sort of target down those Pokemon it needs to at the right time. And Nico just, again, will go back to this throughout the weekend and have been. You know, he's asking questions of Vinny. Do you have the right pieces to maybe start targeting my Duraludon that's actually just sat there on the bench right now? Or potentially this damaged Arceus V that's currently still just going to be waiting there until it ever potentially gets a Hyper Potion later.
Yeah, looks like we're just selecting our Trinity Charge here with Nico. There has been a draw for turn for Vinny, but all players are aware of what's going on here. We haven't fully shuffled deck, so all right, it is going to go into the active position instead here. Vinny, with his draw for turn, will carry on. And will there be a Boss's Orders trying to punish and initiate a prize race here? Or will it be just carrying on with that quest to get as many cards in the Lost Zone as possible? Yeah,
I would really like the option to kind of utilize that Cramorant as much as possible. There's a lot of value in just being able to use 2 free attacks almost.
You can get Hyper Potioned later, for example, so you want to capitalize on the damage while it's in play.
Yeah, so it feels like, you know, if it's available to him, it's something he could consider.
It's looks like it's a switch. Now, but as we know, the current hand of the Lost Box is only the start of the equation because there's plenty of ways we can see more here with more flower selectings.
A lot of dancing and of flower selecting available with that Escape Rope and Scuba
That's an easy choice. Battle VIP pass, hitting the Lost Zone. They have a 1-turn clock. Outside of that, they're finding their way into the Lost Zone time and time again.
There's an attachment for with a Capture Energy, currently active because the Lost City bumped Temple of Sinnoh that Vinny had played down on his turn. So just double checking again. Eyeing up another Goodra, which seems like a very sensible play, of course. Being able to sort of maneuver between 2 Goodras, particularly when right now there's still just a Goodra V.
Right, and Nico committed his energy attachments to an Arceus rather than a Duraludon, which might help him as well, keep the Goodras out of range. So bench them both at this moment in time when you know that your opponent can't pulverize through them in one hit.
I mean, with Nico, in a similar vein, also playing that one-off choice belt.
He does,
and I guess with the 2 energies that are attached to the Arceus V, if there's just one more basic, will reach that 230 onto a Hisuian Goodra, which is normally a nice number. You know, typically we'd have seen with a DTE attached, with that reduction, that 180 just doesn't quite reach the numbers on a V or sometimes
slightly more difficult choice for Vinny. One of his 2 copies of Roxanne in the Lost Zone, so the resource isn't completely gone, but a little bit awkward for him, as Hand Disruption might be a great way to close out, seeing as though Arceus Duraludon is entirely based on just drawing through the deck with supporters and doesn't really sit with any engine in play.
There's Escape Rope.
Yeah, Escape Rope here.
Awkward decision here. Putting up the Arceus V-Star into the active spot. The Cramorant goes into the active as well. Again, another just free attacker, of course, to try and utilize. It looks like it's an announcement that spit innocently again. Now 2 Arceus V just damaged on Nico's side of the board.
Yeah, no prizes taken yet, but Nico's ship is starting to take on water. There's a lot of damaged Pokemon around at this stage. How can Nico go about undoing this? Well, starting off, we're going to reduce that hand size from Vinny and refresh once again with Amani.
Yeah, just getting a chance to see another 5 cards at the top of his deck and reducing Vinny's outs.
Yeah, Vinny only has 1 Mirage Gate available in the deck, remember, so going into a low hand size can really hurt him.
And there's the energy attachment to the active, so there's quite a few different basic energies now committed to his Arceus Vs. As he just double checks through his list, seeing what he will be powering up this turn. Still hasn't found the Duraludon VMAX, just to kind of have it ready going, but does have the energy still in his deck, so does get to power up with that Trinity Nova attack, taking the first prize of the final.
Yeah, it's inevitable that a Duraludon was going to get set up at some point in the game because you need to pulverize through the Rolling Iron. You need to subvert and ignore that attack effect. So it is such an essential attacker in the matchup. Vinny now going to have a look through his first flower selecting. I believe I saw Mirage get in there, and I can't think it's a debate at this stage. You're getting to, well, you're already at 8 in the Lost Zone now with this choice.
I feel like Vinny really needs to get a Rolling Iron off as soon as possible. It also helps with sort of taking down some of these Arceus Vs that have already damaged, or this in current position, the Arceus V-Star.
Hitting the Lost Zone. Seems like the right call from Vinny here, if indeed it was a Mirage Gate. Can't see. There's a Raihan in hand, so that could be a great way to access it.
Yeah,
water energy recovered from Raihan. And looks like the Hisuian Gudra V-Star is coming to the top of the deck. Also going to have a scout through which basic energies remain in the deck.
Doesn't have the Mirage Gate in hand, I don't think. Which...
Well, that could make life a little bit more awkward.
Or does he? I couldn't quite
He's covering up completely with his hand. And not too much help there. But I feel like, especially because you only have 1 copy of that Mirage Gate, you would be choosing that over the Pokemon, because that has just so many more outs towards it. Yep, there is the V-Star. Seems like we haven't shuffled the deck.
No, there it is.
Going to be the Mirage Gate. So we will see a Rolling Iron initiated here. Vinny will be responding with a 2-prize knockout and starting to roll with his Gudra.
Yeah, that Rolling Iron being able to deal 200 damage. And now that it's been set up with the Cramorant, perfectly within range to knock out the Arceus. Yep. V-Star taking those 2 prizes. But then, of course, what's vital, well, usually vital, is reducing that damage by 80. Unfortunately, as you've already mentioned, with the Duraludon VMAX being able to actually pulverize through without actually taking into the effect of that attack, this is where the attrition begins.
Absolutely the case, as Gudra is making its way into the active position for Vinny. And we're also going to see another Temple of Sinnoh. This is still important, don't forget, because it also stops Hyper Potion plays from easily coming down from Nico. And it is going to be the Rolling Iron knockout. And vitally, Vinny is going to have access to Mirage Gate again here from his prize cards. Yeah,
they're really important. He just then needs to just make sure he gets another Hisuian Gudra V-Star ready, as Nico does promote the Duraludon V now. So maybe he's a little bit more comfortable with his hand to be able to hopefully grab that Duraludon VMAX as he quick balls away another Arceus V to begin his turn as well. Just eyeing up another Duraludon. Does he?
I'm not sure if he has enough energy physically to power this up, so he may be looking to use the likes of Raihan to recover some energy, or it's at that point in the game where he's just trying to thin cards at this stage. Like we mentioned before, because he has just a handful of supporters to help cycle through the deck, you really are having to be active all the time, getting rid of cards that you don't really need.
So here comes the Poker Gear, yep, so that did feel like it was a thinning of the deck by at least 1 card, increasing those percentages of hitting something good. There's the Raihan.
Looking pretty decent here.
Yeah, allowing him to then almost tutor for any card he wants now.
Yeah, and a 4th energy going on to the Duraludon. That shows that Nico has some plans in the future to possibly Hyper Potion this attacker, because it is a crucial one in the matchup.
Yeah, he does feel like he's going to be losing that war of attrition of the stadiums as well, because with 3 Temples of Sinnoh in Vinny's list up against Nico's sort of 2 Lost Seas and 1 already been played, it means Vinny will have an opportunity to kind of lock him out of that DTE and Hyper Potion plays when it comes down to it. And as it stands right now, There is that a boss's order and a chorus experiment also in Nico's hand?
So he's got a bit of fuel for the following turns, so that's going to be pretty handy to him, as we are just going to pulverize, completely ignoring the rolling iron. Lots of dice coming onto this Pokemon. But Vinny, of course, has the option to use that Moisture Star this turn.
Yeah, fantastic ability that just allows it to fully heal off all the damage from the Hisuian Gudra V-Star without any real drawbacks. Of course, it is a V-Star power, but it's incredible to have in these scenarios. Right now, you know, Nico, I don't think has a very big hand. Vinny's going to be fairly comfortable in thinking Nico may not be able to get too much at times because he's, ooh, and there's an escape rope.
This is a bit cheeky from Vinny. Giving Nico as little information as possible by making this your first action of the turn outside of concealed cards.
Yeah, Nico
definitely making it tough for Nico.
Nico has to promote first. Just to kind of double check, because there's a number of
boss's orders just in case.
A number of options are going through Nico's mind there. There's, of course, the Comfey.
Well, can Vinny find his choice belt here? That would be massive. If he could Rolling Iron take a knockout here, that would, again, really help you in your prize map.
Yeah, it's just those two Arceus V that he needs to be targeting down. He could theoretically just sort of find his way around the Duraludon now, especially with one damaged as well.
There's a V-Star, and I didn't see what it was up against. It's got to be a good card if it's up against a V-Star and you're debating this, because I feel like a second Hisuian Gudra could still be important here.
Yeah, I feel like oh, it's a Roxanne, looks like, right?
Yeah, looks like the other Roxanne.
As we just peek under his hand there.
There are 3 Hisuian Gudra V-Star in the deck list, and I don't think any of them have hit the Lost Zone just yet. No,
maybe he's just feeling that one could carry him once it does get healed.
I think if you're choosing to Lost Zone this one, it might commit you down a Moisture Star this turn, and that's completely fine. But sometimes you like waiting on Moisture Star for as long as possible, because then you activate your own Roxanne by allowing your opponent to take some prize cards. The Capture Energy isn't going to get the secondary effect here, thanks to the Temple of Sinnoh, but it will be enough to pivot this Comfey out of the active. And let's see how Vinny wants to go about this. Is he going to flip his V-Star marker here and fully heal his Gudra? Well, the damage is already off, so there
you go. Everyone's expecting it, and there we do see that additional V-Star marker. Both players use their V-Star markers now, and it's just completely reset the turn. Does boss's orders.
Okay.
Maybe missed the choice belt as an option, so has to target down this Arceus V that's damaged. Will now go down to 2 prizes and pick up the boss as well from his prizes, which is, again, massive, because now he's still just looking for that one piece.
Yeah, Nico absolutely has to evolve here if possible. And once again, he'll just have to keep hitting through, whittling away at the Hisuian Gudra. He's got over the hurdle of Moisture Star. Now damage will be sticking on this Pokemon. It's going to be a big chorus here. Can he find a way towards Arceus V-Star? Ultra Balls there.
Ultra Ball hand.
A couple of V-Star hitting the Lost Zone, I think it was.
Not needed anymore. We're just going to have to tank with these 2 final Pokemon in Nico's board state right now. And there's the V-Star coming
massive.
Down.
Yeah, it's
huge.
keeping Nico definitely in the game for at least an additional turn here.
A little sigh of relief a little bit from Nico, and just an attack,
just
I believe.
Pulverize. Yeah, looked like he waved the hand dismissively at this Gudra. He wants it gone as quickly as possible, but he's only dealing the 220. As we pass back over to Vinny here, who is in a decent spot still. Has to work on getting his next Hisuian Gudra at this stage, certainly. Is holding on to that other Mirage Gate and Ordinary Rod. And is hoping that he can keep this hand. He's started to grow it over the last couple of turns and hasn't really been disrupted much here. Yeah,
definitely. That already seeing, of course, one Gudra V-Star hitting the Lost Zone does kind of limit that, and Nico probably would have noticed that to full effect as well, because Vinny just hasn't got any energy right now on that Gudra. It's not evolved up. So maybe he's thinking there's a few limitations here. If I can get rid of this Hisuian Gudra V-Star as soon as possible, I might be able to just slow Vinny down enough where he just may not be able to get an attack off in the same sort of vein.
Yeah, Vinny figuring out whether it's worth chorusing first here or doing the Ordinary Rod Mirage Gate shenanigans first, as we are going to see him sift through his discard pile to find some basic energy. Feels like he is getting to work on that next Gudra now.
Yeah, and it seems like, again, a very sensible play. He had the option to do it last turn, but knows, I guess, in this War of Attrition that one will go down, putting him in a position where Nico will have taken 3 prizes, activating that Roxanne, and that's why he wanted to keep hold of that. Just one of those small micro decisions which will come into effect here. because, of course, Nico won't have that information. We're very lucky, of course, to see what was in his hand, as we do see the Ordinary Rod and Mirage Gate combo come into full effect here. And now it's just that one more piece to try and grab.
Yeah, I was thinking that Vinny was going to do this first because he was likely to recycle Cramorant, but because he didn't, he could have actually had the information from the Chorus that he was going to go for first, unless he's eyeing up a Boss's Orders play this turn.
Yeah, another option there, because then again with that Temple Sinnoh still sticking around, it does mean healing that Arceus V-Star is still a little bit more difficult, we should say. Able to then retreat. Here comes the army of Comfeys. As it were, as Vinny's just kind of eyeing multiple options here.
Yeah, I feel like if you were going to Boss's Orders, you probably should have poker geared for the other boss that he saw, because then you're giving yourself that easy two-turn map all in hand. But let's not forget that there is still a ton of flower selectings for Vinny next turn. He's still putting himself in a really good position here with another Rolling Iron.
Yeah, and I think this is key. Seeing that his way to winning this matchup right now were those Arceus Vs that were hitting the ball from Nico's side, not really wanting to give up too many easy Arceus V knockouts. And it's just this awkward scenario now where if he wanted to use something like the Hyper Potion, it'll be both those energies attached to Arceus V-Star in order to do so. And does pick up the Hyper Potion from his Chorus Experiment potentially with another DTE, but hasn't found the Lost City to kind of combat that.
It would be a great time for it, but unfortunately, with this Temple of Sinnoh, it's a lot less easy for Nico. You have to spend both these energy just to retreat, and then you have none remaining for a Hyper Potion. And if you attach that double turbo, it's only, you know, one energy right now.
Yeah, and you know I'm a man of value. You want to maximize all of those energies as much as possible, but has to just retreat here, force Vinny's hand, and again, just asking that question, do you have boss? I mean, you know, Nico's in an awkward spot, but it's down to Vinny to try and take advantage of this and capitalize.
Yeah, even with this knockout, Nico is still, you know, 2 attacks away from winning the game at best. So Vinny has time here to finish off his strategy and deal with this Arceus at last.
And that is here
even the Goodra V can do the job with Rolling Shell.
Rolling Shell for 140 with the same sort of energy cost. Same kind of effect, really only reducing by 30, but that's a...
couple energy there for Vinny. He's just going to have a quick look through. He plays 4 of each metal and water, as well as 3 capture energies. So I feel like he should be okay. He just needs a third to be able to Rolling Shell here.
Escape rope or a boss here.
We see Chorus at least. Also, Roxanne is available, so you could simply attach to Goodra this turn, play the Roxanne, give yourself a good large hand size to work with for the following turn to close out with the Boss's Orders.
Yeah, no, it's a couple of different options here. That Chorus would allow him to spread into the deck a little bit more, but does opt for the Roxanne.
I think I like this, to be honest. You don't want Nico to be getting carried away, even having access to like his own Marnies and hurting Vinny's hand. So I feel like you have time, you can sit back a little bit and relax. Now it does open up some Hyper Potion plays for Nico that little bit more, but you're hoping that Nico's put to such a low hand size that he can't really do much outside of another G-Max Pulverization.
I mean, if Vinny's not able to find a Hisuian Goodra V-Star here...
It's another reason to Roxanne, right?
Yeah, and Nico does, well, even from these 2 cards plus the third draw, finds his boss. That could also be massive. Doesn't look at his cards, Nico.
Vinny's really taking his time here. Does he have access to his last V-Star in the deck? No.
It could be detrimental.
Can Nico find Boss's Orders or Poker Gear here to pulverize through?
Oh, he's got
Boss's
the
Orders straight away. And just like that, it's looking like a much closer game and simply pulverizing, taking out the Hisuian Goodra. Can Vinny still win here? There's a lost zoned Cram, so no, he can't just establish that in a turn.
Mirage Gate to the Greninja.
I'm not sure if he has. I think the last Mirage Gate in his prize cards is denying him.
Just double checking.
There's 1 in the lost zone, 1 in the prize cards. And Vinny somehow just whiffing his V-Star from being in an ascending position is now really behind.
Yeah, that was a massive swing turn here. That has put Nico in such a commanding spot. Just the attackers are gone.
Vinny can cycle it all he wants, but there's really not many good cards.
Maybe there's a way to cycle back in a Cram and boss up the Arceus V-Star.
Yeah, I think we've just seen a Boss's Orders come into Vinny's hand.
Okay, so are there still enough options? Or maybe the escape rope into the Cram, maybe? Yeah,
the Cram's in the lost zone, I think.
Oh, sorry, yes, of course.
It was just the random Lost City Nico needed to bounce the Temple of Sinnoh, which is really paying dividends right now.
just that one-off needed. And yeah, causing a lot of trouble for Vinny now.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see how many ways he has to recycle energy. We've seen at least one Ordinary Rod. I think both might even be committed. He's going to bench Hisui and Gudra, but I'm not even sure he has any way to power this up.
Not without just
manual attachments. This turn, no.
Just to pass over, and then, yeah, of course, for the final prize, he just has to announce it, which he's done. That G-Max pulverization. Game 1 goes to Nico Alabas. And, wow, what a turn of events. I had no idea that this was actually possible. I was kind of... Would you have tried to go for maybe the Chorus's experiment? I didn't know if there was enough escape routes maybe still available.
I feel like the Roxanne was the safest play.
Yeah, sure.
Like, you're still seeing 6 cards overall. Yes, you only had one Hisui and Gudra V-Star, but you're still trying to make it as difficult as possible for Nico. If you play the Chorus, you have a slightly deeper dig because you're guaranteed to not draw back into the cards that you're shuffling back into the deck. But you're just saying, please, Nico, don't have it in that low hand size.
Yeah, and it was, I think, the second card that he turned over when he finally looked at it, and Vinny's just shook his head and said, yep, well, that's the game.
Yeah, I mean, we saw how he was in such a commanding position, and then as we get further and further into the game, the lost zone decisions become more difficult. We start losing resources as we go. We had some awkward Mirage Gate prize cards as well that didn't help out at certain stages, and the Roxanne just didn't really work in this instance.
Yeah, maybe that decision of the flower selecting between the Roxanne and the Hisui and Gudra V-Star might have paid, you know, really been the biggest decision of that game 1, which kind of handed it back over to Nico, who was kind of on the back foot for quite some time.
It looked like he was 3 turns away from winning, but by not evolving, suddenly you're 2 turns away, and by knocking out Vinny's only threat, you can sit there with your massive Duraludon and have no worries.
Yeah, I guess the only reason why I ask about the Roxanne is when you face across a Duraludon player, you know, they're just going to be announcing attack after attack after attack, and just kind of disrupting their hands. Yes, you're kind of disrupting the boss, but often, maybe sometimes being the aggro player and being a bit more aggressive could pay dividends, but I'm not too sure.
I felt like evolving was the safest option there, to be honest with you. Seeing as though you know Nico is set in stone with his damage output, you know that you're buying a turn simply by evolving your Pokemon. So in many ways, it is better than hand disruption, especially when you know the Arceus Duraludon players are playing Pokegears in very high count alongside bosses' orders. You're still quite hopeful, even though it's only 3 cards. Yeah,
as we go to game 2 now, and both players already kicked things off. Some interesting prizes there. I mean, nothing too crazy from Vinny's side. Maybe the Choice Belt or Ordinary Rod could come into effect, especially when they're at the top of the prizes. But Nico does have his one-off single strike mustard there, and 2 of his Chorus experiment. So, I mean, I've seen multiple players still pick up the cards that they need from their opening hand anyway. I mean, that's why you play a 4 of.
Yeah, exactly. You're playing 4 Chorus to still see them. You're still playing that really high count of Pokegear. So I don't think it's going to be a huge issue for Nico. And actually, if you are getting into the game still and still have access to early supporters, continuing to take them off the prize cards is actually a really great deal. As Vinny is going to start off the turn in the best way possible with that Battle VIP pass. Also has his favorite starter in the active position, that Comfey. So he's off to a really good start here. He needs to bounce back and win 2, but we do have plenty of time on the clock, and he's got a really good start here.
Yeah, remember with all the top 8, top 4, and the final matches, you do get additional time to give the best opportunity for our players to actually finish off the 3 games if required, of course, as we do see the Battle VIP pass and the capture energy come down for the boards, which is what we typically have seen many times now with this Lost Gudra list.
Let's get dancing some Comfey. Trying to use as many flower selectings as possible is vital because we need to unlock that Mirage Gate and even the lost provisions from Cramorant. But trying to do a few on turn 1, even without the help of Colrus, can really allow you to pulver into 7 as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and this will be instantly being able to go into 2 just from the active and being able to pivot with it from that energy attachment. But as Vinny's continuing to see more cards first, make his decisions maybe a little bit easier because he has more information. As he just takes the 2 there, plenty of cards in his hand, plenty of things to work with as he does his first flower selecting of game 2. There's one of the Roxannes again.
And it's going straight into the lost zone. No debates here. I think it was a scoop up net. So Vinny recognizes that he wants to chain as many of these as possible. And now that he's picked up a 3rd Comfey, it seems like a really easy decision. So we will get into our 2nd flower selecting here, knowing full well there's scoop up net that. I think even escape rope already in Vinny's hand.
Yeah.
So got to be pretty happy with that. And when you know he's throwing away the likes of Switch, that it's just more good stuff coming into the hand.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, could go into the 4 already, into the lost zone on turn 1 if you choose to do so. Great, easy choice again with that Drapion V going straight in. Easy choice for that Chorus Experiment for his next turn as well. Nico will probably be looking at his opponent's hand, thinking, I wish I had that access to that much information and cards. But that's how Arceus Duraludon sometimes does just play out. There's the Temple Sinnoh
as well. That negates Nico's best turn 1 play. That Trinity Charge is much more difficult now. Would be forced to find one of his copies of Lost City in addition to double turbo energy. So Vinny recognizing how frustrating it can be for Nico to have the stadium developed, and will pass things over now.
Yeah, also sort of makes one of those cards in Nico's list his own Temple of Sinnoh, just an unplayable card, and just like could just help to clog up his hand a little as he does play the first Chorus Experiment of game 2 between the two players, of course, having access to a supporter nice and early as he, you know, just deliberates over those 5 cards that are in his hand there.
Staring pretty intently at them. I'm not sure if that means it's good or bad. Nico does have a decent poker face. A lot of supporters.
Lots of supporters.
An energy attachment at least is guaranteed. That's 2 of his boss's orders, and 1's in the prize cards, let's not forget.
So we'll only have access to 1 boss now.
Yeah, Nico hasn't had the luxury of searching his deck. The Chorus was his first action.
As he does bench both an Arceus V and a Duraludon, just a manual metal attachment. Not much else really going on.
He has Lost City to bounce Stadium next turn, so he has one of the sort of pieces he would look for, but doesn't have a guaranteed V-Star yet, and that would be what he needs to sort of complete his combo. It's over to Vinny, who we already know had that Chorus in hand, so he's going to have a look at 5 cards here. And they were all exceptional cards, to be honest with you. This is a tough choice already.
Yeah, I mean, if he knows that he's already prized one of his ordinary rods as well, that has to be going to hand. It just does choose the boss's orders.
As well as Water Energy.
Yeah, already evolved up to Hisuian Guja V-Star as well. So it's now down to just kind of setting it up with Mirage Gate where possible. This will take him up to 6. Escape rope going to the Lost Zone again. Gives that impression that Vinny has something already in hand. He did have an escape rope ready.
Massive right now. So he has a ton of options. It would be interesting if Vinny even looks to use his Radiant Greninja as an attacking threat this turn, because there are once again 2 Arceus V on the board.
Oh, there was a concealed cards for a Chorus Experiment and a Guja. So now has both Gujas down on his bench. There's an escape rope going to be played.
Flashes it, but not too sure about it.
Yeah, keeps hold of it in his hand for the moment, confirms he is playing it. There's the Arceus V going to the active spot now. Yeah,
I feel like I would have liked to have held the Hisuian Guja before playing this escape rope, because you give your opponent information that you can't be just hit by a cram here.
Yeah.
Just a minor thing, but just good to bear in mind your sequencing. Nevertheless, we're at the magical 7 cards in the Lost Zone now, so there can be Mirage Gate action this turn.
Yeah, and this, as you mentioned,
there's 2 in hand already.
Just as you're always going into the Comfey anyway. Just kind of folding it is an option. But of course, if that was always going to be the play anyway, sometimes it's not too bad.
Yeah, maybe Vinny already has the bigger picture in mind, knows where these energy want to go from Mirage Gate. It's going to be yet another escape rope.
Back into the original Arceus V with the metal energy.
Deja vu.
We're back again, and
looks
Vinny
like we're going to be rolling.
Yeah. Well, unable to take the knockout because that choice belt is in the prizes, so just going to be dealing that flat 200 and reducing damage by 80. You know, Nico's not going to be swinging with that Duraludon VMAX anytime soon. So potentially reducing the damage from Nico, if it is a DTE, down to just 100 damage.
Yeah, I mean, this is the perfect time. The earlier you rolling iron, the better, because Nico can't just pulverize through this guy. He needs to use his Arceus first. So it basically forces Nico in that position where he wants to move this Guja out the way, and you've just seen him put 2 into the Lost Zone. So it seems like a really good time to try and get some free tempo on the opponent. Yeah, not only that, that escape rope that Nico also plays, also in the prizes as well. So just, he's just not going to be able to, well, he could, it's never say never, but it feels a little bit difficult right now to kind of maneuver this Hisuian Guja V-Star out of the active spot, just so he can deal sufficient damage, really, if he can get going with this Arceus V-Star and the active, well, he's got to get the Arceus V-Star first, I should say. Turn attachment completes Vinny's turn with a rolling iron here for 200 damage. Doing really nice chunk into Nico's Arceus, but it's all about the reduction here as well. Nico picks up a Poké Gear. That's not too helpful. You'd love to find access to a Star Birth so you can actually use Boss's Orders this turn. So the Goodra's reduction is going to stick here.
Yeah, we saw in the first game, Nico sort of pivoted between his Arceus Vs to sort of protect him where he could. I wonder if this scenario, he will just think, maybe I just have to use this damaged Arceus just to deal something, start prepping some damage onto the active Goodra V-Star whilst I get ready for my own board.
I think if we're seeing Poké Gear, it means Nico's not going to Marnie. I'd be more tempted to Colress if I'm thinning a card from the top 7. Because you would like to Marnie yourself back into supporters for a future turn. So that means he's probably going for the deepest dig possible for the V-Star here.
Yeah, and with multiple outs, you know, he's got the Ultra Balls and the Evo Incenses and hitting the card itself. All viable options as he sees the 5 cards now in his hand.
I think that was Arceus. Was that Ultra Ball?
I think I saw an Ultra Ball.
All right, one hitting the Losso, which means it's even better. he's either hit multiple, Evolution Incense,
so again, now it's just having to maybe just commit to the active. Does move the Duraludon VMAX to the front of the deck as well, I guess, with the V-Star.
Yeah, we're going to be Star Birthing most likely here. I'm pretty sure Nico already had Stadium Bounce in hand, so he can do the old, let's grab double Turbo Energy, let's grab my Duraludon, make the most out of them. Just get my board set up for future turns, because you know your V-Star's not going to stick around all game. With so much damage on it.
I think it's then going to come down to that sort of Stadium Bouncing again. If Vinny's able to get another Temple of Sinnoh down at some stage, just try and really limit Nico's healing capabilities, as well as just any sort of shenanigans with Arceus V-Stars attacking with a DTE instead. So as he does choose to evolve that very damaged Arceus V now to the Arceus V-Star.
Massive dice. It's difficult to do it all in one go, but doing a good job here and almost instantly flipping that V-Star marker here.
Yeah, and it's now just able to pick 2 cards out of his deck of his choice. There's the Duraludon VMAX. Instant choice there, and that makes a lot of sense. The switch is being eyed up. Just, I guess, giving himself a pivot option at stages if he needs it, maybe, but we'll confirm exactly what cards he may take shortly.
Maybe it means he's already drawn into double Turbo Energy, perhaps. It feels like definitely a piece. Yeah, there it is. So we will be Trinity Nova-ing with the Stadium Bump here. And even though it is just a little bit of chip damage, it gets you in range with a Pulverization. So you're not actually too worried about this. Although, let's not forget that Vinny has the option to Moisture Star when need be.
Yeah, but again, thinking about the value and sort of access to Moisture Star, but I guess if he's going to see the threat of this Duraludon VMAX shortly, still just a Duraludon V.
Yeah, so maybe Nico elected for a different target here rather than, I think possibly even it just was the double Turbo Energy.
Yeah, definitely. So let's just have a little look now how Vinny's going to turn this game back into his favor, I suppose, with, I guess, he's just going to have to keep announcing. He's going to take 2 prizes off this Arceus V-Star.
Yeah, I mean, the walls are built. We're here. It's just the slugfest now of these, literal slugfest. It's down to Vinny to find the next V-Star here. And really, it's just, you know, I've set up my stall. Nico, you've set up yours. I've got the first hit in. Can I just continue my chain?
Yeah, as Vinny continues to draw through his deck as well, just get the right pieces that he needs. Looks like he drew into another Mirage Gate. Again, of course, another fantastic piece. Does have the second Hisuian Goodra V-Star primed and ready if he chooses to use the Mirage Gate. Does choose to Chorus Experiment first.
Yeah, continuing to dig through the deck. Has a couple easy choices there, I feel like. VIP Bar, certainly one of them, and likely the other Comp Fair with 3 already on your board. I think that's plenty. Yeah. So we're just ticking along nicely here. 7 is the only breakpoint that we really care about in the Hisuian Goodra deck. We don't need to go any higher than that for anything in the deck list for upside. But Vinny really is taking his time here. Is he debating the Moisture Star at this stage?
Don't want to make any mistakes here. Remember, he is 1 game down, and we saw what we thought Vinny was going to be in a very strong position in game 1, and that swung, obviously, when he missed that 1 sort of important card to continue just back-to-back rolling iron. I think he is honestly just debating.
The math now. Yeah. There's a lot of value in allowing Nico to start taking prizes because, again, it opens the trapdoor of Roxanne. So that could be the thing going through Vinny's mind right now. Maybe I let Nico into the game just enough. Ooh. But no, he's saying, I want this Gudra to stick around for as long as possible. Definitely a debate at this point.
Yeah, I guess he still has the option to maybe, well, actually, no, with rolling iron dealing 200, it just takes out the Arceus V-Star. Going ahead on prizes now, so we'll start the prize race at this current moment in time as Nico's staring down at his board, looking at just a powered-up Duraludon V. Right now, just needs that Duraludon V Max if it's available. I suppose even with Choice Belt, it wouldn't have knocked out the Duraludon V anyway.
No.
So it didn't even need to necessarily evolve it, so was quite comfortable in that position. Does attach the Metal Energy, does evolve now, and we're going to start swinging with that G-Max Pulverization. Yeah,
looking very solid. Also has Choice Belt. That is also going to go into the active. We're going to see a big Parasol onto the benched Arceus. Is it just going to be Marnie time at this stage? Vinny's had a number of turns to accumulate resources. It definitely seems to make the most sense here for Nico.
I think that was just a quick ask of how many cards are left in your hand. We've all done it. Yeah. Always want to make sure we understand what our opponents have access to as they shuffle up and place it to the bottom of their decks. Nico drawing 5 and Vinny to draw 4. Let's see how Nico can continue this turn. Obviously, we'll just punch through and then just... Oh, it does hit the Hyper Potion.
Yeah, that's a pretty handy card to have, especially because we've seen that 4th energy already dedicated to the Arceus, the Duraludon. We're just making sure the Arceus V-Star, should that be in the lost zone from the previous turn, thanks to Lost City?
Yes.
Probably should be. That might be one of the judge things we're getting sorted out. But in the grand scheme of things, Nico has no Pokemon recovery to speak of, so it absolutely doesn't mean much here. And although he does have a lost zone counter right now, he's taking no advantage of it at all.
No, it's one of those few decks which utilizes that Chorus's Experiment to fantastic effect, just because being able to see 5 additional cards kind of remove 2 that are less useful, you know, just an overpowered Sharon, or I say Sharon, Frenzagala.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Which is such, it
makes a mockery of those cards.
I mean, 100%. I just say it for fun because we always see those cards in almost every set, right? And it's not played, but from this effect, you are really drawing 3 cards.
Seeing 5 is a lot of cards, and even with that downside, oftentimes you can think of your discard pile as your lost zone. There are so many things that you can't recover naturally in the game anyway, that it's really not as painful as it looks from the outset. As Nico is just going to complete his turn, dealing 250 damage here with his G-Max Pulverization.
Those 5 dice just jumping onto that Gudra there.
5 dice. What? Yeah, it's truly 2023. These Pokemon are so tanky at this stage.
And we've already seen that 2011 format you were mucking around with. 120 was massive back then. And as we, go back to this game, as we see Vinny just draw into his energy, it looked like just then. But what can he do? He's just got to power up his other
Taking a moment
Gudra.
to think, yeah, can he afford to conceal cards this away? Seeing as though his Ordinary Rod is up in his prize cards.
And he didn't use the Mirage Gate last time when he had a couple in his hands, and now that's gone straight to his the bottom of his deck, as he just does go into the switch to the Comfey. Maybe he has another card to sort of pivot around. Has the energy, of course, as an option, but just checks his options
as one of his options, but the fact that he's thinking twice means it's 2 very strong cards here.
Was it a Scoop Up Net, the other one?
Possibly.
Yeah, there you go.
It certainly was. It's going to be Colress instead.
Oh, so both players just double-checking everything. All fine. There's the Chorus Experiment coming down now. Again, both players, we see it sort of back-to-back between both players, which is great. There, I think one was a Battle VIP pass.
Yeah, that's definitely going. And also another Hisui and Gudra V. We've set out our stall now. We've said our 2 V-Star are going to try and carry us through the game. Maybe get the Cramorant in there when need be. But these are the only attackers that really Vinny's looking to formulate here, as he's going to re-establish the Temple of Sinnoh. That little frustrating soft lock, as we are going to see a Scoop Up Net. Vinny's continuing to charge through this deck here with another flower selecting.
Yeah, he just wants to see better cards. Is
VIP once again
VIP
with a right hand coming to hand. That's pretty solid.
So keeps himself ready for future turns if that Hisui and Gudra V-Star does go down. I mean, he
It looks like he's going in with the damage one this turn, right?
He really cannot not attack for a turn. We saw how pivotal it was that turn where he didn't in game 1. So he does have that manual attachment.
So retreats.
Yeah, not being able to sort of manually power up that other Hisuian Gudra V-Star on his bench as well. So yeah, some really tricky decisions, I think, that come out of this game, being such a slugfest.
Yeah, he's tight on resources right now. Even with Raihan, I'm not sure if he has many energy remaining in his deck to actually finish powering up this next Gudra on the bench.
Does already have 1 energy attached,
just
doesn't it? The one
right
metal.
Now. Yeah. But there are a couple in those prize cards. I think there's at least 1 water in the lost zone. There's so many cards in there.
Yeah, and just announcing of that rolling iron. And Nico will just be looking at his hand, seeing how he could utilize maybe that hyper potion that he's got there. I don't know if he has any of a draw effect right now.
I saw Quick Ball. I think it was a Raihan of his own in hand. It's so interesting to see these tanky decks using Raihan, because there's only very small windows of opportunity to use them, but you need that little bump in energy attachments throughout the game.
Yeah, and just at Arceus V now being pulled out of the deck from that Quick Ball. Again, that sort of thinning opportunity, sort of just double-checking his options that are available to him. Right now, I'm going to say it, but it may change very quickly, but it looks like Vinny's still in an okay, good advantage.
He feels slightly ahead here, even though Nico will be equaling the prize race with this pulverization, especially if Nico can't get an energy attachment here. This is a massive poker gear to see if Nico can draw out of this dud hand.
Yeah, will he be able to? Remember, he has 2 Chorus Experiment at the bottom of his prizes.
His right now.
So it could just be something like a Marnie that is available, considering he's lost zone 2 of his boss's orders already. Does pull the Marnie.
This is massive. Nico needs to keep up in energy attachments here. So the Marnie does find its way into the hand. We haven't seen a shuffle up here. Vinny did well to continue drawing on that previous turn, chose to move out of his Gudra, jump in and out of a couple Comfey. So Nico, once again, undoing that, especially getting the Raihan that Vinny picked up to the bottom of the deck now could be massive.
Yeah, just another poker gear there by Nico. Another Marnie available to him. Probably not ideal to pick up both Marnies if he's going to be playing one, of course. Wants to maximize the chances of being able to still play multiple supporters, sort of back-to-back turns, looking at his hand again. The Hyper Potion is also in an awkward spot because he does have 2 fighting and 2 metal on it. The attack cost of the Duraludon VMAX requiring 1 fighting and 2 metal. If he uses Hyper Potion, he doesn't guarantee he'll hit the energy he needs to be able to continue attacking. So a really tricky spot because he's not just able to maybe use a Chorus Experiment just to see all these cards that he needs to.
It's going to be the additional Marnie finding its way into Nico's hand, but I feel like he will be using this turn, just deciding to take another card out of his deck, so he's seeing as many cards as possible because basic energy is still massive here for him.
Yeah, double-checking Vinny's resources as well. Again, one of the key things as a player you have to be doing is also understanding the resource management of your opponent as well, especially when they're playing a deck like Lost Zone or Lost Zone Engine deck, sorry, I should say, because there's so many pieces of the puzzle that just kind of maneuvers everywhere, and Vinny's keeping track of his own resources there, because just double-checking before he shuffles it up.
It's actually a really important thing to do, because especially when you play Mirage Gates, if you've taken any energy off prize cards or anything, it's really good to take that mental note of knowing what you not only have access to, but where they are, because it can dictate how you maneuver your turn, if you want to play ball search cards before flower selecting, that sort of thing.
Yeah, maybe looking for that Mirage Gate once again. That might be available. I mean, both players right now, they're just going to have to be swinging back and forth and just seeing how this matchup can go. Simple cases, Nico's having to, I think he found an Pokemon Evo Incense, but not much else in his hand as available.
Here? Once again, no attachment for Nico? That would be a rough break.
Yeah, just potentially allowing this Duraludon VMAX to just really struggle and just maybe take out this Hisuian Gudra V-Star, but then be retaliated to give up free prizes, could really swing it completely in Vinny's direction.
We at least see the evolution here. Nico trying to stay out of range of these rolling irons. We, of course, know that Choice Belt is in the top left for Vinny, and he is going to take a knockout, finally, on the tanky Hisuian Gudra. Nico gets a couple chorus for his troubles as well, which is really handy to keep him ticking over. Vinny goes into Comfey here, and I think he was manied into a Mirage Gate.
Yeah, that could be massive, because Nico's only way of powering up this Arceus V-Star is when his Duraludon VMAX gets knocked out. He has to get that Raihan the next turn to be able to at least retaliate with an attack of his own. Otherwise, he could be in trouble. He still also has to deal with...
Exactly. Vinny has gone through a lot of resources.
Yeah.
There's the Ordinary Rod in the top for Vinny, and I don't know if there's any energy in here for him.
No, this is... Again, has Vinny just not resource management correctly?
Cycled. He even pay retreated with a Comfey at one stage just to see more cards.
This is a concern. The stone-cold look from Nico at the moment. Just what is happening is, has he just picked up that Vinny may be out of their energies?
Goodness. Vinny's just run out of gas. In game 1, it happened as well a little bit, and in game 2, just not enough energy available to him.
Little shake of the head there. Yeah. I think it's giving everything away. Nico not showing any emotion whatsoever.
I mean, it looked like from Nico's perspective, because he's missed energy attachment, as long as Vinny could announce an attack, he'd have his back against the wall. But now Vinny just cannot make anything work here. Cramorant doesn't deal enough damage to deal with Duraludon. Yeah, this is it's so telling here.
I can't believe... I think Nico's thanking everything that's just come down to this moment
here. When you see no
here.
target from Mirage Gate, you've got to be beaming from ear to ear. That's as much as Nico smiles, actually.
Well, we could do our best when we interview him.
He might do a little bit more later when he's lifting a trophy, perhaps.
Well, medal. A medal now.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, this is huge. I mean, Vinny
and Roxanne for Vinny. This isn't changing anything.
Vinny's not able to do anything from this scenario, right? With that Ordinary Rod stuck in the prizes and one already used.
Can he bring up Arceus and hope to hit it a lot with Cramorant, enough to draw energy from prize cards? You know,
I mean, that's not even enough anyway, right? Oh no, I guess
you have to attack it a ton of times, and then you take your 2 prizes. They happen to be the right energy.
I mean,
we are seeing boss's orders here. There is Raihan as well, but if we're seeing boss instead, that means Raihan couldn't even access a capture energy. There are no more energy in Vinny's deck.
Does he have access to Cramorant as well in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah, I think there's Cramorant available here. So he's going to have to try and bring up Arceus and punch it a bunch of times with this Cramorant.
How much HP does this Duraludon have left? It's taken 200.
Yeah,
it needs 130.
Those prize cards. So you can't just hit into the Duraludon with Cramorant because you have no Pokemon recovery once again. That Ordinary Rod earlier on used.
So that one out he has, and it's not the best at all.
Cramorant's not even in hand right now. So if you're going for a stalling boss's orders play, it has to go the long haul. Going to see another flower selecting here.
Yeah, it's going to be
Cramorant.
Oh, okay. And the boss's orders has to go to the lost zone. So he does have an attacker now.
Can we get Cram into the active is another question. We've just played a switch. Can we move this next Comfey?
I mean, he's benched it.
Innocently?
He's benched it.
He's shaking his head.
There's got to be something. Why would you bench it if there
boss's
wasn't?
Orders. Slowing down the Arceus.
And it looks like just a pass. It looks like the hand motion.
Nico's
this is massive.
Got to feel like he's in the ascendancy at this point. Everything has changed from this moment. Vinny was on full pedal. He was getting ahead in the prize race. His next Goodra was ready to go. And then suddenly everything changes. There are no more attackers. And Nico simply has to move this Arceus out the way and keep announcing attacks with his Duraludon.
Yeah, this is, again, sort of akin to game 1, where Vinny sort of just ran out of gas. Nico's spinning his deck to use Chorus Experiment to just find the pieces of the puzzle that allows him to continue working through. There's the Lost City, which reactivates the double turbo.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great combination to grab together. You definitely don't need that big parasol. And Marnie not looking great either. Raihan seems like a really good choice here. So
has outs to back-to-back choruses. Experiment from the prizes he's taken as well. Nico now able to just kind of just keep plowing through.
He's far away in the prize race, but when nothing's coming back at you, you're just in touching distance here. Yeah,
you never normally feel comfortable with a 200 damage Duraludon VMAX either, knowing that this could just give up 3 prizes. But in this position, considering he's seen so much tells from Vinny, you know, playing that Mirage Gate with no energy, it does just mean that this Duraludon VMAX could just stick around even with like 130 HP left.
And if Nico wants to be really patient, he could pass back into Vinny here. He doesn't necessarily have to play Stadium Retreat and hit. he could just leave Arceus in the active position.
Yeah, I think
it's
he's
now down to
considering
Nico to figure out, yeah, he is playing reserved here. I really like this because Vinny could have more gust outs available. Nico looked through Vinny's lost zone and discard pile, so I think he's making sure that his Arceus doesn't get trapped a second time, causing him more headaches.
I really want to know what Vinny's thinking right now. How could he utilize his deck to full effect? Nico, of course, didn't replace the Temple of Sinnoh yet. Of course, he wants to do it on his turn when he's being able to take a prize and attack when he needs to. There's a flower selecting here by Vinny. There goes a card. I think a scoop up net goes to hand.
Really important here, so we can at least start using Spit Innocently with Cramorant here.
Yeah, the Raihan still in hand as well. Maybe just kind of applying some pressure with the Cramorant, just dealing the 110 with the Spit Innocently. Back over to Nico.
Does Nico have just a basic energy? He draws the double turbo energy. So now he can knock out Vinny's only attacking Pokemon by simply replacing the stadium and attaching for turn. And then Vinny will have no more responses.
No, not at all. There's the Lost City coming down now, reactivating both the double turbo energies. Now dealing only 160 damage, but more than enough to take out that only attacker that's staring at him from Vinny's side of the board as he announces Trinity Nova.
That's got to be going to the lost zone yet. Justice have picked it up straight away. But yeah, I mean, I literally that's it. Vinny says that's
He's
game.
Extended his
he
hand.
has no other way to damage Nico. And despite having some heavily damaged Pokemon and starting off behind in the prize race, Vinny had nothing left.
In both games, Nico has to come back from behind with the sort of resource management that Vinny's kind of gone through and take the game with just that one Duraludon VMAX, just being able to sort of plow through most of Vinny's deck and still hang in there. That wall of attrition, despite not actually healing once, was just enough as a bit bulky Pokemon actually take Nico to become Utrecht champion.
Yeah, a phenomenal game, and what a strange situation. It felt like, despite being 2-0 up here and Nico winning, it never felt in his control. It felt like it was on Vinny to close out the game, but he just didn't have enough resources.
Yeah, and I think when we both spoken to Nico, the reason why he's picked this deck is because he could be pretty chill about it. He wants to just have a deck which is sometimes just, you know, he doesn't have bad matchups. He doesn't necessarily have good matchups. He just does his game plan, which in reality, that's all he done. He managed his resources well. You know, some of the few things he has to keep an eye on, some of the free fighting energy that is in his list, some of the boss's orders, where they are, and he just executed it just as you would expect of any Arceus Duraludon player. Yeah,
for Vinny, it looked like he was like one or two flower selectings too much. Like we said, early on in the game, you have plenty of outs. You know that you can throw plenty into the lost zone. You absolutely have to put enough in the lost zone so you can start accessing your Mirage Gate, but then there comes a point where you're getting Marnied over and over again. You've drawn into some awkward cards. You need to flower selecting to keep up in the game, and you end up getting rid of a resource too much. And then, yeah, I mean, Vinny's deck just falling a little bit flat there, really fizzling out after a very strong start. Yeah, all of that gas just running out sort of in the mid-game, in effect, which just put Vinny on such a poor foothold in the actual match once his main single attacker went down, because there's no real other way to replenish the energies without, you know, having access to those important cards like the Ordinary Rod. He did have the Raihan, of course, but that's only one time, right? There's no way to then get two energies onto it, and that's the troubling thing with playing these Lost Zone engine decks. It's having to make sure you're making those micro decisions to perfect percentages and maximum value. Yeah, really impressive to see Nico there. Could have easily rushed, because he could easily have tried to like retreat out of his Arceus and try and be as aggressive as possible. But then he could have been in that really awful situation where if Vinny was just holding on to certain pieces and then could knock out the VMAX, he could have found himself, you know, with egg on his face and having just a terrible board state of his own. So being patient, taking that breath, taking the time to power up that Arceus to close the game was, again, a really solid, grounded decision in a high-pressure situation. Yeah, and he's no stranger to these positions, right? He is an international championship winner over in OCIC a number of years ago, and it's just amazing to see this player be able to consistently perform at the highest level throughout the years. You know, we've known Nico for quite some time now, and he's always been there in and around the sort of day two top cuts, and it's just such an impressive feat. But
Yeah, congratulations to Nico, of course, but congratulations as well to Vinny. You know, he put up a massive, fantastic fight, making a second top 8 in fairly quick succession, you know, from Liverpool, regionals in Liverpool as well. Just unfortunately, just fell a little bit flat, both either through the Pokemon from Hisuian Gudra in Game 1, the V-Star, or the energy in Game 2.
Yeah, I mean, he may look back at these games and cringe a little bit. It's one of those things when you're in that high-pressure situation that you are going to sometimes make decisions that you wouldn't in any other situation. But that is, you know, why we do this. We white-knuckle those finals. You get that adrenaline pumping. Pokemon does this to people. And Nico had icy veins in that final.
Yeah, 100%. You know, Vinny just in that position of just having to go through the motions and then just kind of just draw the wrong cards, maybe just at the wrong times and just cause awkward scenarios. But yeah, take no credit away from both players. A fantastic final, that war of attrition, not just of the Pokemon. I think I highlighted that stadium was pretty vital.
Absolutely was,
as well. That Temple Sinnoh really slowing down Nico at moments from using that healing of the Hyper Potion and just being able to attack with something like Trinity Charge on his first turn, really just limiting what was available, but Nico was able to play through that.
Yeah, and let's not forget what this is all about. Both Nico and Vinny have achieved a huge amount of championship points this weekend. They're both going home with a ton of boosters. They're both getting some medals as well, so going to look great on that mantelpiece. It's going to be one of those things they remember for years to come. Yeah,
100%, and I'm sure we'll see plenty more of both players. As I've already mentioned, you know, Vinny's had multiple top 8s already now. Nico, again, no stranger to being in the top 8 or even winning tournaments, so it's going to be amazing to see. We've still got plenty of tournaments for them to continue maybe plowing through and getting more CP. I'm sure right now, I think this pretty much guarantees invites for both players, even if it's just those 2 finishes for Vinny right now, I believe, or
so
if not,
points.
super close. And Nico, I think, is a player, when speaking to him, he's always been one of those who keeps going for top 22. You know, the road to Yokohama in Japan is a fantastic opportunity to try and get top 22.
And for Europe, that closes the chapter on Crown Zenith now. That is the last tournament. It feels like it's been a while. You've struggled to the end if you're still here. Well done to you.
Yeah, thanks for sticking with us through that.
And yeah, now it's EUIC on the horizon. These archetypes are still playable next set. You know, we don't see, well, we do lose the Duraludon V, but we keep the V Max, and there's still a usable Duraludon V in the next set, and the entire Lost Zone engine remains next format. Gudra might have a different look to it, perhaps, but these are still playable in the next set. So if these are archetypes that both players believe in, they could try and adapt them for the next format. What do you think about these 2 decks going into the rotation?
Yeah, I mean, particularly with Lost Zone decks in general, it does lose a couple of cards. The scoop up net's massive, right? Being able to reduce your board and kind of set it up just for your main attackers, whoever you decide to partner the engine with, whether it be Gudra or whether we've seen things across the pond like Giratina V sort of coming back to the fore as well. Seems to have found itself in a really strong position, just from some of the cards it maybe gains and some of the cards that other decks lose. And just positions itself really well. Duraludon itself does lose the healing factor.
Yeah, that's a real issue, actually, losing that Hyper Potion. You still have that really annoying Skyscraper, and it looks like Mew's not really going anywhere. Lugia may still find a way to be a top contender, so it's still a really relevant ability. But I wonder if Duraludon will still be that key threat in the game, because there have been many games where we've talked about Hyper Potion, but it's never actually really come up. So he's able to just be big enough with its raw hit points that it never even needs those healing cards. So yeah, I'm really interested into seeing how these decks formulate game plans into the next set. For Hisuian Gudra, I put some time into theory crafting a list already. When you lose that scoop up net, I feel like maybe even looking towards the Melanie supporter to get a turn 2 rolling iron as an alternate approach could be something. And I think that could be a great direction for the deck.
Yeah, I think it's something we've seen before with Gudra list. They've tried out the Melanie before because it does need that water energy to be able to get those rolling irons going. So definitely an option there for such an important card, particularly the way it's performed this weekend as well. You know, there was it 3 in top 8?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which was fantastic to kind of see its conversion into, well, from day 2 into the top 8. Lugia just does find itself in an awkward spot. I think you completely hit the nail on the head there. It loses quite a lot in terms of like the raw energies and the variety of attackers.
Powerful colorless.
It's got to find a completely new partner going forward. And there's been some, you know, with sprinkles of information across the pond with single strike coming back as well.
Yeah, I love seeing the innovation players have to go through with new cards being introduced and so many cards leaving the format. And it's not like Lugia is just going to go into thin air. Archeops is one of the silliest accelerators we've ever seen. It's still absurd how much control you can have of your board state and burst attackers into play. Seemingly unrealistic energy costs become just easy to accumulate all in one turn. So I feel like Lugia is not going anywhere. It's just finding a new home.
Yeah, definitely. Lugia is just one of those cards which may be just finding a backseat and becoming a bit more, even more of a support Pokemon potentially going forward. But little on that for now. We do have the winner's ceremony ready for everyone, and we're just going to throw it back over to our other caster. I believe it's going to be Ross on stage. Thank you for tuning in with myself and Joe here. Enjoy yourself with the winner's ceremony. See you shortly.
And welcome back for the final time, ladies and gentlemen, to the stage over at the Utrecht special event. We have had a wonderful weekend of Pokemon TCG action, and I might have had to say goodbye to my fellow casters, but I'm joined by Pikachu this time, and I think that is a trade that is very much worth making. Of course, we've also been making history this weekend. We've had 693 Masters Division players, making it the largest special event we've ever had in Europe, and I'm told the first we've ever hosted in the Netherlands, so this has been just a fantastic weekend. And it's been long for the players. You have to play 9 rounds on day 1. You have to get your record of 6 wins, 2 losses, and 1 tie, or equivalent, or better, and that gets you into day 2. And then you play 5 more rounds. We had 75 players make it into day 2. We then had to cut down to 8 players, and then we went into that single elimination, going all the way down to our champion. And I think it's fair to say all the players here that we saw in top 8 and beyond very much deserve their positions this weekend. We do, however, before we give out some prizes, we have to give out some thanks, including to the crew backstage who have been absolutely phenomenal all weekend, making us look and sound fantastic. And, of course, to your judges and TOs, without whom we very literally cannot even run the event in the first place. So if I could please have a round of applause for all the wonderful judges we've had this weekend. We cannot clap enough for the judges. Without them, we have to cancel the tournament. It is that gosh darned important. So, now that we've had our final, we've crowned our champion, we need to actually crown them. We need to give out some medals. So could we please give a very warm welcome to your runner-up, Vinny Shelfout. Congratulations, Vinny. I do believe we have a medal to give you here. Congratulations for a fantastic second place finish with a deck we were not necessarily expecting to see a lot of this weekend. If we could please have a massive round of applause for our Utrecht special event runner-up. And of course, after we give out the prize to the runner-up, we need to bring in our champion. We need to give a fantastic introduction to our Utrecht special event champion, Nico Alabas. Congratulations, man. I think he's got your medal. Here we go. So, Nico, you're no stranger to winning. You've won many events. You've won an international championship in the past. How does a tournament like this compare to a tournament like that?
I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, NIC is a completely different thing, but winning an event is always like a great feeling. Especially, like you already mentioned, right? Especially event of this size. Like, this is a regional size special event, so it's like, yeah, it obviously feels amazing to be the best of over 700 or close to 700 players.
Yeah, it was a truly fantastically large tournament, a fantastic performance from yourself. Arceus Duraludon, not exactly a deck that everyone had pegged as the best in the format. You know, last weekend it was a Lugia world and we were all just living in it. What made you decide, you know what, Arceus Duraludon, that's the play?
I mean, it's kind of a funny story because there was never any discussion or any debate about Arceus Duraludon being the play for the tournament. It was more like just me being tired of playing Lost Box and tying every 2 rounds. So I was talking a lot to Rahul Reddy, for example, and we were just like joking around. Yeah, next turn we're just gonna bring Arc Dura. And then I was like, finally, for this event, last event of the format, everyone is tired of playing Lugia or against Lugia. So I just rode with it, and I mean, it worked out in the end.
Absolutely. And one last question then. We're there in that last game. Your opponent plays a Mirage Gate, doesn't grab any energy. What's your thought in that moment?
I mean, obviously, if you see any Mirage Gate deck just grab 0 energy, you either know they're all in hand, or they're just completely out of energies. And then when he didn't even manual attach, I was like, okay, if I now just play around Raihan to potentially, maybe he has like 1 more in hand and just holding it for the Raihan, just play around the Raihan and then, yeah, basically just take the game home.
Well, fantastic. Congratulations to you. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, we might be done with this tournament, but in 4 weeks' time, we've got the European International Championships. We're bringing in the new set and the new block with Scarlet and Violet. We are rotating, so it is going to be one of the biggest, most important tournaments, and is probably going to be breaking records for attendance in Europe. So we do have to say goodbye for today, and that's very sad. But in 4 weeks' time, we are going to be at the EUIC over in London. It is going to be fantastic. So look after yourselves. Grab yourself a nice cold beverage and get ready for that one. It's going to be awesome. Thanks for tuning in.